Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to more Warhammer 40k lore, where today we're going to have a look at the Orc Speed Freaks. Now, if this was YouTube of, say, 2010, I'd be shouting Speed Freak at the top of my voice into the microphone right now with some Motorhead playing in the background. But it's 2020, and YouTube frowns upon that sort of behavior these days, so you're gonna have to make do with a more regular video instead. I know, we must all suffer for YouTube's sins, but hopefully it will not be too disappointing. Then again, I can't imagine how a horde of angry, crazed orcs driving huge war bikes and trucks at breakneck speed well beyond any kind of safe limits could ever be disappointing. As a clear-cut demonstration of this, behold! The Gorka Morka game developed for the Dreamcast. I shit ye not. Even rendered in prehistoric graphics and undoubtedly running on a device powered primarily by cavemen tears, it still looks kind of awesome, doesn't it? And today, of course, it's even better. The Orc Speed Freaks stem all the way back to the very first edition of Orcs in Warhammer 40k, though they really came into their own in 2nd edition along with the release of the now infamous Gorka Morka, in which roving bands of warlike greenskins cobbled together whatever machinery they could, slapped some wheels on it, and thusly produced bigger, better, faster, and more hazardous means of transportation. And these days, of course, you can build entire armies centered around the theme of road-raging, ravaging speed freaks. But where did it all begin? Why are there speed freaks in the first place? Well, the speed freaks is one of the many subcultures of orcdom, and the largest as well, because going really dangerously fast speaks to something primordial and base in the orc mind, and they all virtually universally enjoy it. Or perhaps that's putting it too mildly. It's not just that they get a kick out of it, it is a calling to them. It is a deep-seated need in the mind of the speed freaks. They gotta go fast, they gotta go faster, and they gotta do so in the most absurd vehicles imaginable. Indeed, lack of safety precautions is the second most important aspect of any truly good orc speed cult vehicle. And to them, going at breakneck speed, preferably across uneven terrain, whilst blasting away with several heavy machine guns, not necessarily overly worried if they hit anything, is as core to their being as fighting is to any orc. But this does raise the unavoidable question of how? The Orky Borkies are hardly well known for their technological exploits and groundbreaking innovations, after all. The average greenskin would be hard-pressed to figure out how to hammer nails into his favorite beatstick without a demonstration and detailed step-by-step instructions. And yet, we are expected to believe that not only are the orcs as a species capable of building and maintaining a vast fleet of motorized vehicles, we're also expected to believe that they can drive them. So, how, by Gork's gruesome gonads, have they figured out how to build super roadsters that can go across any terrain, no matter how hostile, at speed, with the equivalent set of driving skills of a brain-damaged chimpanzee with an ass full of Tabasco sauce at the wheel? Most reasonable-minded individuals would expect, at best from such a scenario, a brief yet energetic burst of speed, followed swiftly by a spectacular automobile accident. And yet, the orc mechs have developed a knack for crafting creations that can not only stay the right way up, most of the times anyways, despite the orc driver's often overly energetic handling of the steering wheel, but the vehicles are also so incredibly rugged and simple to operate as to be virtually idiot-proof. Orc-proof in this case, I guess. The first element of all of this is that the orcs, trucks, and bikes can run on practically anything, with no real difference in performance either. The truck could be running on liquidized seal cubs, and the sheer evilness of it would somehow find a way to drive the truck forwards. And the motorized miracles don't stop there. Despite their often ramshackable construction, consisting 99.9% out of random pieces of scraps, nuts, bolts, and duct tape, orc vehicles can nevertheless go on for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles, with no need for maintenance beyond a grot, fastened in usually an improvised fashion to the rear of the vehicle, smacking it occasionally with a wrench. Trucks have also, on repeated instances, demonstrated a nearly impossible level of resistance to damage. There have been occasions of trucks being struck by anti-tank weaponry that would have reduced battle tanks to fiery wrecks, and yet keep on trucking just as happily as ever. This remarkable resilience also extends to the more natural malfunctions and quirks of the designs. One orc driver returned his truck to the mech shop for a quick little fix-it-up because he'd been noticing a drastic dropping off in speed lately, and upon arriving, the big mech in charge swiftly pointed out the 6 large rents torn in the front hood. The origins of the mysterious openings were quickly revealed to be the exit holes of the truck's engine pistons. At some unknown point in the truck's travels, they had, one by one, been quite literally fired from the engine block. The Big Mech, by the way, admitted that this could possibly, theoretically, have something to do with his brand new and experimental special fuel mixture, and yet, despite lacking 6 of its 8 pistons, and also having introduced 6 brand new, ventilation holes to the engine, it still made it back to the depot. Now, some of you may be thinking right now, hold on there, Archer old boy, this is all starting to sound mildly implausible. And normally you might have had a point, but we haven't even gotten to the insane stuff yet. Oh no, the truly impossible part is still to come. The paint. For you see, the orcs have come to the conclusion that red-uns go faster. And therefore, obviously, if you paint a vehicle red, it'll go faster. Obvious, right? What do you mean that doesn't make any sense? Red is clearly the fastest color, okay, this is undisputable. And therefore, if you paint a vehicle, or even in fact an orc red, well, then it'll go faster, won't it? Obviously. And this is not merely an illusion, an effect the orcs have dreamt up. No, red vehicles literally do go faster than non-red vehicles. And, as an added note as well, if the red paint is scorched off via flame of fire or las gun volleys, for example, then the vehicle will slow down. It all makes perfect sense, don't you see? Of course it makes sense. If the red color is what makes it go faster, then surely if the red color is removed, it'll go slower. Duh. Now, admittedly, Imperial scholars and Mechanicus scientists have struggled to explain exactly why this is. But they, of course, simply just lack the correct frame of reference, obviously. As far as the orcs are concerned, there's nothing mystical or strange about it. Again, red is the fastest color, ergo anything red goes faster. Clear as day. Whilst for the rest of us, the explanation is a hint more complicated, but it has to do, of course, with the warp. The immaterium, hell, if you would like, the realm of the chaos gods. The warp is whatever we make of it, whatever intelligent, emotive races make of it. Now, the vast majority of this, almost all of it in fact, is purely instinctual, and well beyond our ability to control. But there are those races that possess a high enough level of sophistication and control over their emotions to use the warp as a tool, or at the very least, used to. The Eldar, for example, were one of the species created by the ancient Old Ones, who apparently could mold and form the warp in ways that we could hardly even dream of. The Eldar possessed an ironclad control over their own wills and over their own emotions. This, combined with an understanding and knowledge of how the warp reacted to these emotions, allowed them to wield its power. One of the most obvious examples is their architecture, their craft worlds, their wraith-bone constructs that seem as if they simply should not be able to stand. It seems as if the weight placed upon them will be far too heavy for their relatively spindly and elegant limbs to handle. And yet, their structures stands. Their wraith guards and titans move as graciously, and more so, in fact, than any dancer. It should be impossible, but the very nature of the warp is, of course, that anything is impossible and everything is possible at the exact same time. And back during their heyday, the Eldar could literally just dream up entire structures created from nothing. They could come up with gods in the immaterium and wield them like a mason might a hammer. And the orcs as well, another creation of the Old Ones, were meant to do much the same, but on an instinctual, basic level. This is where the orcs' understanding of technology comes from as well. I should probably do a video about that in the near future too. But for the purposes of this video, all you really need to know is that an orc is not an intelligent being. It's not going to be developing a combustion engine or guns or anything like that. But as the orcs grow in number, their warg energy, their collective psyche within the warp, increases alongside their numbers, allowing for specialized individuals to appear, like docs and mechs, all of which are gifted with seemingly instinctual understanding of things. And so the technological level of the orcs increases until finally they're crossing the great void between the stars in ramshackable spaceships. And it is this instinctual control over the warp that makes it so that red ones go faster. Every single orc in existence does not merely just believe or think that red ones go faster. They know that red ones go faster. To the orcs, that is as inescapable and unarguable a fact as gravity or sunlight. It's just simply how things are, and nothing you could ever tell them could convince them otherwise. And now you know why the color red is the fastest color in the universe, and why the Cult of Speed therefore usually use the color red for all of their vehicles, their banners, and their war gear, with a dash of yellow occasionally too, because that's also a fast color, just not as fast as red. A bit of a fun factual aside, by the way, red light is actually the fastest form of colored light. In most circumstances, though, there are some in which blue is actually quicker. So maybe the orcs aren't actually all that crazy after all. But enough about discussing the speed of color. Instead, let's get back to the Cult of Speed, shall we? Because it kind of sounds as if that's a larger organization, right? A warband, perhaps, or an orcish nation. And you wouldn't technically necessarily be wrong in thinking that, but at the same time, the orcs are not overly fond of such silly things as organization or cohesion or any such stupid nonsense. The Cult of Speed is not a single warband. They do not take orders from a single leader or rally beneath a single flag. It's more like way of life, perhaps? A religion, maybe? A generalized belief or an urge that lives deeply within the orcs that belong to the Cult of Speed. Therefore, you could have two Cult of Speed warbands going to war with one another. Granted, the orcs hardly need a reason to fight one another, or anyone else for that matter, but the point I'm trying to get to is various Cults of Speed are not necessarily allied or even friendly friendly with one another simply because they both belong to the same culture, spelled with a K, of course. Instead, the various warbands tend to coalesce around particularly noteworthy individuals. For most orc warbands, this would be a warlord, a really big orc, with the ability to browbeat all of the others in line. And that occasionally happens with the Cult of Speed as well. The biggest orc with the biggest bike takes control of all of the other orcs with the smaller bikes. And so they construct a sort of hierarchy. One big orc might take control over 6 other orcs and create a biker squad, whereas a much bigger orc again might become the war boss and command several other nobs, the larger but still smaller than the war boss orcs, who in turn command a bunch of regular orcs. But in the case of Speed Freak warbands, there are also other reasons why they might gather around a single leader. A particularly talented mech boy, for example, might have gotten a reputation for crafting the biggest and the most awesome trucks in the entirety of the galaxy. And that, for Speed Freaks, is going to garner him quite the following. All the orcs gathering around him, taking orders and instructions, all in the hope that they will be the next ones blessed with one of his custom jobs, a special vehicle with special properties. And these can be anything. It could make a battle wagon far tougher, for example, able to shrug off virtually any damage. Or it might give it fancy tires to make it go faster. Or a self-igniting engine, because the mech boy figured, well, explosions make cars go fast, so if I blow up the entire engine, surely that should produce one hell of a burst of speed, right? And I mean, technically speaking, he's not necessarily wrong, and further experimentation may be required, but eventually he might come up with a way to boost an engine's performance for a period of time without destroying the entire engine block. Other organizational systems might also be clan-based. It is important to differentiate between clan and culture. There is some overlap. For example, the Evil Sons are famous for the huge numbers of Cult of Speed adherents within its ranks, but there's nothing preventing a Goth, for example, from joining a Speed Freak warband. Simultaneously, a Speed Freak band of warbikers might join up alongside a group of Bad Moons. But that raises the question, of course, why would anyone ever even want to be associated with a band of greenskins whose only Gork-given gift is driving at breakneck speeds whilst occasionally not crashing? The answer to that, of course, is speed. Because beyond simply being remarkably amusing for the orcs involved in driving the vehicles, going fast has a whole lot of military applications as well. Now, granted, orcs are hardly the most tactical or strategical or logistical or, anything race, but even so, having a roving warband of crazed lunatic greenskins on fast vehicles roving behind your enemy's lines, shooting at anything that moves, and frequently things that don't move as well, it's gonna cause a lot of chaos if nothing else. And as it turns out, the Germans figured out, and the Russians figured out, and the Americans figured out, and pretty much everyone figured out, causing chaos behind your enemy's lines turns out to be pretty damn effective. And there are other, more immediately obvious benefits too. Orcs have forever been very fond of hitting things heavily over the head with blunt or sharpened objects. Eventually, their enemies started figuring this out and started committing more and more to the unsportsmanlike behavior of simply just shooting the orcs way outside of slapping range. The elegant and also, as a bonus, fun solution to the problem of catching a bolt round to the jaw while still only halfway across the field is, of course, for all of the boys to barrel on into the back of a truck and drive screaming towards the enemy rather than merely running screaming towards the enemy. Furthermore, there is a logical limit to how big of a gun an orc can handle. You know, they've got to be able to lift them, or construct a fanciful rig so that they can carry them around. Now, orcs, being the entrepreneuring big gun enthusiasts that they are, have certainly managed to heft some impressive hardware onto their shoulders over the years, but the simple fact still remains that if you want a really big gun, some kind of tracked or wheeled chassis to put it on. The speed freaks have plenty of those, and you're not going to find a single solitary greenskin driver that is going to say no to mounting an even bigger gun on his vehicle. And there you have it. The cult of speed. Road-raging greenskins with a penchant for big guns, loud explosions, and fast cars. As always, I have been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope to see you all again soon. Until then, have a good day.